Yeah, so we're in my studio. My name is Christopher Daharsh. We're in my painting studio at my wife Alicia and I's house. We just moved in here and set up our painting studios pretty immediately and got to work on this body of work, sort of paintings and drawings inspired by the turbulent past year for us and the world, reflecting our emotions on that and our natural environment that we find ourselves in now, which is, you know, amongst trees and lakes and ponds and rivers. And I was on residency in France and just got back into the painting process. I was investigating how observations during walks, runs, bike rides is like an investigative way to come up with certain moments of inspiration, like the way that leaves slowly decay, the way that snow piles onto tree limbs, the way that that shadows interact. Pairing that also with how I can make them feel more like my psychological states and how those reflect psychological states in parts of my life that I don't necessarily find beauty. Optimist in me wants to say they're more about learning and more about like sitting into my psychological states and learning more about them and trying to confront them. I think that like in sitting into the psychological states that I'm feeling, they become an escape. I feel like dealing with them a little bit more on a concrete wavelength. Yeah, this is the first time in a while that I've had a home studio, and it's very nice to just like be able to wake up and just come down here with a cup of coffee and like have that immediacy of being able to see it in an environment that inspires me. I work back and forth with drawing and painting in these, so like I'll on like a primed canvas that's like toned, I'll paint on top of that and then I'll draw on top of that. And usually when I'm drawing it's in charcoal, and so the charcoal kind of mixes into the oil paint and kind of adds another texture or a bit of pigment. The most recent layer that I put on this was charcoal, just like vine charcoal, and then I go back in with thinned out paint and kind of like do that illustrative mark making back into it. And it's kind of this like conversation between two mediums, but like in a physical way. So I have like a sculptural practice as well. A lot of that is like collecting materials, collecting objects, collecting casts, like so that kind of like getting an impression of like an outside world, or getting an impression of like nature, or getting an impression of like certain situations outside of the studio is very important. The horizontal paintings for me, they become more cinematic. They become more like immersive, whereas like the vertical paintings I see more of as like portraits, even though they're not depicting people or animals, they're depicting like a scene in nature or a psychological scene in nature. In New York, like in the city, I was still interested in nature and how the depiction of nature can reflect psychology, can reflect mood, can reflect like, I can't just be making art just about art. Like it has to be, I have to live for me to gain anything from that and to like get inspiration. Especially since coming back to painting, I've learned a lot from Alicia's practice and been inspired by her but yeah, and then we come together in like the mediums that we're doing, and we're like learning from each other, and like she does a lot more with texture and I do a lot more with maybe line or like sketching in the painting, and I feel like I'm always learning different things. And the nice thing about having a home studio is I can just like walk upstairs and like go talk to her about what she's doing.